Sure.
So for everyone following us and for yourself, we are right now on our interactive platform, but this is also being live streamed on Facebook. And I'm joined by Badiucao, who's a world-renowned Chinese political cartoonist, an activist, and a rights activist. And we're going to talk about protest art, about his work, about his life. He's literally one of the most prolific cartoonists on China, and had to go into exile because of this, and has done some amazing art. And we will conclude the session by showing you some of the art. Honestly, it speaks for itself, but you'll be able to ask all of your questions and interact directly with him. So ask your question on the chat and on social media, and we'll be relaying it. So welcome. Just to start, we wanted to ask you a first question that we got a lot on social media. How did you become a political cartoonist? What started all of this?
Well, I think political cartoon is just, a language that I choose to express my concern on the social incidents in China and the human rights record. You have to understand it's not easy to be an artist in this world in general, right? It's even hard to be an artist who want to dedicate their works in politics and human rights, because you suddenly got censored in a lot of spaces. Sometimes come from the Chinese government, sometimes it's self-censorship, from the venue or galleries itself. So because of those difficulties, political cartoon, especially political cartoon on social media, become the most, easiest way and the most efficient way for me to communicate with the world. And most importantly, that having an opportunity to showcase my work without worrying about my work will be twisted or censored, because I have all the means of controlling of the content, and it's open, it's transparent. So that makes me started to do art like political cartoons. And the other thing is, I think it's very important now for artists to focus on the reality. I think it's beautiful for artists to do art for the sake of art, but we're entering this very different world now that I believe that we should also share certain social responsibility. By saying that, I'm not saying we should abandon all the aesthetics or the beauties within the visual language, but we should use it for the good purpose. And political cartoon is such a thing that engage with the most biggest group of audience. It's not like high art in a white cube. It's something that talking to the mass public. It's something that you can truly, use to raise awareness on important issues like what we see in Hong Kong or East Turkestan.
No, I couldn't agree more. Sometimes we say a picture is stronger than words. And in French, we also have a saying that is that any struggle and revolution happens through art as well. And it's absolutely essential in advancing any struggle. And you've been doing it for quite a while. So if I get it correctly, you had to actually flee mainland China because of your work, right? Because of how vocal you were. How did you continue? How did you find the strength to, literally have to flee to be able to express this way?
I started as a anonymous artist. I don't show my face. I always wear a mask for like interview or any public performance, because sometimes I do performance in street art as well. And my identity got compromised, and the Chinese police, probably the National Security Police, find out who I am, and then they harassed my family member in China in order to get to me and cancel one of my solo exhibition in Hong Kong. So that become the major change for my life. It's an incident defined almost the trajectory of my art career, that I have to face this choice. Do I continue my art, or do I disappear myself and stop making art just so I can have contemporary or temporary safety? However, this is the thing that I believe in. Silence will not bring you freedom or safety, and it actually make you a more vulnerable target. You're losing all the support, you're losing all the voices, you're losing, in practical, you're losing the leverage that you can use to counter this let's say, national terrorism from the Chinese government. So I want to continue my art. I don't believe that I can still be myself if I'm giving up the thing that I love most, which is using art to deliver a message caring about human rights. So here I am. I reveal my face and continuing doing whatever I want to do.
Just before I jump on Andrea and Claudia's questions on the chat, I think what you just said is a very strong call to actions for people across the world to also act on injustices and stand up in this instance against the CP when people in mainland China, in Hong Kong, and outside are literally risking their lives, their safety, and their family's safety to be able to express themselves like you did and continue in the face of literally, I mean, I can't imagine the adversity you had to face. Then for those of us who are in a place of relative safety, it doesn't become we shouldn't have a choice anymore in acting. It should be an active duty to have to stand with those that are already risking everything. So my call for the people who are watching this, whether on Facebook or on this platform, is if you have a choice, if you are able to stand up meaningfully, to protest, to stand with Chinese people, with Hong Kongers, with Tibetans, with Uyghurs, and with any people who press across the world, it shouldn't be a question anymore. You should do it when you hear this story.
Yeah.
Andrea is asking you, I mean, we've been going through your Instagrams, through your tweets and everything, and you react so quickly to the news and with such powerful images. How do you do it in such a powerful manner so quickly? Where do you find your inspiration on a daily basis?
I mean, one of the formula to create political art is online memes, which already exist. I mean, memes is such an interesting in the phenomenon. It engages with people, it's popular. So hijack or infiltrate means to bring a political elements is one of the very efficient way or a shortcut to do so. I mean, one thing for satire art is if you try to build a bridge between one of very common and popular image and the most taboo political message together, then you create this monster that even the censorship system in China or in other country would feel difficult to stop its spreading. Because on one hand, if let's say the Chinese government was censoring something like Winnie the Pooh because it is compared with its president Xi Jinping, then people ask why. It's just a harmless yellow bear. Why do you do that? But if they choose, okay, we don't want backslash, so we'll just allow the yellow bear survive a little bit longer, then people suddenly get the message behind it. So this is very important for me while I'm creating art. And also, I don't shy referencing old masterpiece as well. I think a good way to appropriate old masterpiece is a way to engage with people who have pre-knowledge of something that they're familiar. Then you find a channel to talk with them with something they've already know, and you try to slip in the message that you want to tell them, and it's very important. I mean, political cartoon, it's like it's like a kind of fresh fruit. When it tasted in time, it's nice, but nobody remember it tomorrow. So to be quick is one of very important thing to do. But of course, after several months or weeks, when I look into my work, sometimes I have to think about, oh, why do I do that? So time is critical. But also, if you put enough care into one of your political art, if you put enough aesthetics, I mean, it's not just a pure political message, but you treat it as an artwork. And usually it will have longer life because when people see it, they can still get something interesting. And then that is the window. They look into the very incident that happened yesterday, 2 weeks ago, 3 months ago. So people remember it.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to see some of your art pieces in just a few minutes, and you kindly let me pick the ones that we will be seeing. But one of those we chose was one with Winnie the Pooh that you just mentioned. And I think, you say political cartoons pass quickly, but this one you did quite a while ago, right? Like I had to go back way back to Instagram to find it.
Yeah.
And it still feels, as relevant and as strong as it did back in the day. So I think by treating it as art, you are managing to make it have a very, very long life. Something else, just because I'm conscious of time, that I wanted to ask you is you mentioned, looking at masterpieces, past masterpieces, and using them to pass a message. So obviously, I'm assuming that one of your target audiences with your art is people within mainland China, people in Hong Kong, people in Tibet, and so on.
Right.
But your art also speaks to the rest of the world. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm based in London right now, and I've been following you and looking at what you do, and it speaks to me, right? And I don't have any ties to mainland China. How do you manage
Right.
to make art cross borders when it comes, obviously, a nice picture crosses borders, but for you, it's about political satire, political cartoons. How do you make it have a
Right.
universal meaning? And this is so key for us because we're working on cross-border mobilizations on different freedom struggles, so it can really help us in achieving this as well.
Yeah. I mean, one of the very important thing is I choose to not use speech bubble in my political cartoon as much as I can, because language is always creating barriers, especially when you don't speak Chinese or English. But visual reference can be universal. When we're talking about important masterpiece, whether in the Eastern, fine art history or Western fine art history, people know that. Or familiar fashion or commercial movie icons, people recognize it instantly. And these are the bridges. These are the key bridges that you can talk to different groups. They will find universal values within. And the other part is probably if you create something really peculiar, something really bizarre, something makes people want to know more, something makes people wonder, then even the content is not familiar to them. They might still have the curiosity to dig a little bit more, then they'll find a story behind. So you either go something is really familiar to everyone, or you do something is really out of the box that make people wondering what the hell this is.
It makes a lot of sense. I don't know if you can answer or if you feel comfortable in answering the next question, but Claudio asked if your choice to continue political cartoons, to continue your art, to continue your work had implications on people around you. And I think it's a really valid question in the sense that, for many activists around the world, their activities have direct implications not only on themselves, but their families, their friends, the people they work
Yeah,
with.
yeah.
And it is tough. So if you feel comfortable in sharing, but I also know it's very personal. So if you feel comfortable in sharing any of this, would be great.
I mean, it's a wrestling game, it become very political in a way. And one thing that I'm pretty sure is when you're dealing with a sub-government like the one in Beijing, you show softness, they will keep pushing it. They will harm you more. They will push you to do something. They will not satisfy when you're silent. They will like you to do more, like betray your friends, selling secret of your organization or the people who support you. Then the next question is when can you stop it? There's no stop. So you either fight or you totally lose it. And either way, your family will not be safe. But at least if you keep making the noise, you will have enough international support or support from the art community, and that could weigh in the safety, including yourself and your family. And that's also something I truly believe. Um, and and think about this: if you choose to be silent after the intimidation and harassment, then you set an example for others. And
Yeah.
then basically you're telling the words, well, we're giving up. So it's not just about my safety, it's about others' safety. And if I do this, then inspire a second people, and second people can inspire more. Then it means we all share the same risk. The power of Chinese government is limited. And if we really have the whole world join us, then we all share the risk together, which means every piece of risk shared by
Yeah.
individual will be smaller and smaller. And we always need someone to do it in the beginning. And I think I'm in a relatively good position, which have a broad audience, but also relatively safe because I'm not in China. So I feel obligated to do so.
I mean, still, it's incredibly brave. And I think Tom said it very well in the chat. This is why there's no excuse not to act for those of us whose families are safe, and for those of us that are safe. And I couldn't agree more. And I think a few people jumped both on Facebook and in the chat on the Chinese government's pressure methods. They always go, for example, Hige, I'm sorry if I don't pronounce your name very well, but said that the Chinese government always goes for pressure methods. They always go after family members. It happened in Inner Mongolia due to China's language policy. And it's happening also with the Uyghurs. It's happening also in Hong Kong. And I couldn't agree more with you that, someone needs to start, and it's amazing that you did start. But then the rest of the world needs to follow to share the risk. And we can't stay silent. We live in a world that is globalized. We live in a world where trends and threats go beyond borders. So should our courage.
And well, I really want to highlight it's not just Hong Kongers fight or Chinese fight. It's about universal human rights. I mean, when you see the brutality of police in Hong Kong, you also see it in the US, right?
Yeah.
You can't just fight for one, and it's all related. If you are a person with principle and integrity, it needs to be applied universally, not just in one place, but in other places as well. And for me, I think it's just very basic.
It links very well to the session we just had before on inclusive democracies, and it's exactly one of the conclusions that came out. You can't just fight for freedoms in one place. Or you have a lot of US politicians, for example, that are condemning the police violence in Hong Kong, which is right to do, but they're not condemning it in the US. And one goes with the other. Obviously, the situation in Hong Kong is dramatic right now, but it's not the only place on earth. And it's, as you said, it's humanity's struggle. We are stronger together. We can share the risk together, and so we should. I think there's a perfect bridge question before we start showing your art, which comes from Emil.
Sure.
Who's saying that creativity is a sign of a free society, and Hong Kong has been very creative in their protesting. How do you think creative has made the Hong Kong movement different from other movements, and how can creativity be used in the face of the national security law?
I mean, the soul of Hong Kong protests would be art, in my eyes. I think it served the protests pretty well. During the hardest time, it comforting people, giving new activity for people to join in, not just visually, but also music. Think about Glory of Hong Kong, the Hong Kong national anthem that, circulated in the whole protest group. And like performance art, like Hong Kong Way, which is inspired by the movement which happened in East Europe early in the 19th. So all of those things are engaging people, like bring people together. But also one of very crucial thing is protest can be bland and boring when it lasts for half a year, whole year on media. Then the media is starting to searching for images like violence. It came from the police and sometimes from the protesters as well. Then it kind of brings down the whole image of the protest swiftly. It changes public opinion when they see protests are kind of confronting with the police. They say that it's bad on both sides. So we want to change our opinion. But art serves a role to keep the movement non-violent. It make it appealing to the public in the longer term, and also giving media some new things to report, which I believe is very important for continuing gain support from international society.
Couldn't agree more. So on this note, I think just behind me, I have the tech team who's trying to upload the slides you created exactly. So I think what we can do is selected 6 different pieces of art that you made. So maybe we can show them and you can explain, because obviously your art speaks for itself, but I don't know whether our audience actually is aware of everything happening in this instance with Disney's Mulan and the significance for Hong Kong. So maybe you can say a few words and people can, of course, ask questions as we go.
I mean, Mulan is one of the most vivid examples how Hollywood is kowtowing to the Chinese government and massively produce this basically propaganda art for the Chinese government. One of the major problems is the leading actress Liu Yifei, who openly prized the police brutality in Hong Kong in the Chinese social media. I mean, if this happened to a white actor or actress, uh, I mean, think about the Me Too period time. There's so many people got pulled away from major like TV series because they did something unethical, because they did something which is sexual harassment, need to be condemned. But when it's come to a Chinese actress who is, pro-authoritarian regime like Beijing and police brutality in Hong Kong, she got she's not criticized and she does not need to apologize for it at all. So this is serious problems, and this is the reason why I create this image as if the tank which happened in 1989 when a massive students protest happened in Beijing, China. The Chinese government just sent the militaries to cracking down on the protests, and it ended up sending the tank crash of those students live on the streets. And one of the guys think enough is enough. So he bravely stood up and saying, I want to stop this tank. And really just using his body to stop a line of tank. And that image become almost like a symbol and a totem for the spirit of freedom of the Chinese. But apparently, Liu Yifei, the Mulan in this new Disney movie, is not on the side of democracy or freedom. She's on the side of the tank. When she says the Hong Kong police did well job on cracking down on the protests there. And the other part of the very unacceptable thing is Mulan actually takes several filming in locations of East Turkestan, which we all also know as Xinjiang in China, where the more than 1 million people being detained and tortured in concentration camps there. But in the end of the Mulan, thank credit, it says they thank the Chinese authority, the local authority, by helping them. So I think this is really ugly to see. It is wrong in all level, and the worst thing is it actually happens in Hollywood, a American, film huge industry.
Yeah, I think people are commenting all over social media saying how powerful it is. And I mean, all over social media on your image, I mean, but also the boycott Mulan hashtag has been very, very strong. And I've seen quite a few alternative Mulans as a result, with, for example, Agnes Shaw being said that she is the new Mulan, and
Yes.
that we should boycott this one, which I thought was a great twist to the story. To the amazing tech people behind me, can you put the next one? Thank you. So I think
For this one, yeah.
no, wait, perfect, it works.
Okay. Right. For this one, it's for the Apple Daily. So Apple Daily is a Hong Kong newspaper that tried its best to report the incidents in Hong Kong objectively and try to not be manipulated by the central government in Hong Kong or in Beijing. And the founder of Apple Daily is punished by his marvelous newspaper. He got arrested several times, and they're threatening to take his freedom away. This image is showing, a group of police. They're really afraid of these little papers on the ground with the apple on the top, which is the logo for Apple Daily from Hong Kong. So, if I may, I'd like to do a little advertisement for Apple Daily. If you can support this very good Hong Kong newspaper, it will bring you the most updated information there.
And they just launched as well, I think, an English opinion section. So for those of us who can't follow otherwise, you can also support Apple Daily by going into the English section.
Right.
Claudia, you're up for the next slide. Amazing.
So this image is quite a heavy one. It's obviously inspired by one of the probably the only one photo leaked from the Xinjiang concentration camps. And from the original photo, you'll see people light up in a very packed square each place and monitored by the police. And they basically are treated as slaves there as well for working and brainwashed with the Chinese Communist Party's philosophy. And in the middle of the art, you will see the image of Xi Jinping, who is the leader of the Chinese government. Um, for the Chinese government, they always treat different ideology or beliefs of religion as a disease. In a lot of official document, it actually refer Muslims as patients or Islams as this kind of virus in the Chinese society. So we're all familiar with it when, in the old time, people would treat LGBT community as a disease and try to, change them. And for the Chinese government, they see Muslims as diseases as well. So they need to be physically and mentally transformed into a healthy person. And that's basically what the facility is doing there, the concentration camps. So by featuring there, you will see this chilling image of Xi Jinping as if he is the desk doctor in a concentration camps in the Nazi German period of time.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the strongest image I've seen about this since the beginning. I think we can put the next slide, Claudio. By the way, I'm sure you can see the comments as well going throughout, but people are saying that this image is incredibly powerful.
Thanks. For this one, it's more like commentate on the country that I live in now, Australia. I'm based in Melbourne at this moment, and Australia is one of the country heavily polluted and influenced by the Chinese propaganda system, especially for the Chinese community in Australia. We have 5% of population in Australia are actually Chinese descent. They may come from mainland Hong Kong or Singapore or other Asia countries. However, if we read in Chinese language with the news, it's heavily controlled by media that is invested by Beijing capital, which means the Australian media in Chinese language is totally aligned with the propaganda system in Beijing on important issues like human rights or geological conflicts. So in this image, you will see the panda is trying to transform the koala as the look of a panda by, brushing them with black ears and kind of black eyeballs. So this is a process that's still going on, and I do hope that Australian government would do more to stop this process and helping and protecting the Chinese population here away from Beijing's manipulation.
Yeah, and I think it's extremely relevant in the current discourse, right? With Australia taking a stance against what was happening in the extradition treaty.
There's some good change, yeah.
And as people are saying, your art speaks strong. I couldn't agree more. Yeah, we can go for the next slide.
Thanks.
Sorry, I'm speaking at the same time to the people behind.
All right. So this is the Winnie the Pooh's cartoon that I did several years ago. So basically, now everybody knows, Xi Jinping is Winnie the Pooh. We all use the meme to mocking him. But it started from a photo comparing Xi Jinping and Barack Obama. So, it's really back in history. With a screenshot from, I think, the cartoon when Winnie the Pooh was kind of walking with the tiger. And then the Chinese government react on it strongly and fastly for censoring this image. So a lot of artists like me want to this legacy continuing. We did a lot of groups of cartoons and memes online, try to make this thing survive. And now, as the whole world knows, Xi Jinping is the yellow bear. It's also featured in the cartoon show Thousand Park last year. This is the vivid example showing that when you bring something is really common, then it makes the censorship system self-deconstructed.
That's a very wise way of putting it. And I think we have one more, if I'm not mistaken, slide. Or was this the last one? Sorry, the tech is, we're trying to deal with both the streaming, the platform, and the tech.
I think this one about Trump, no?
Yes, it's here. I
There
think
we
you're
go.
able to see it now.
Okay, this is a bit of, I don't know, G grade cartoon. For me, I don't trust Trump as a savior to China or to any place because he's not a man with principle. He's not a man who respects human rights. However, there is a huge tendency among, let's say, the Chinese dissident community and some people in Hong Kong as well. Because when you're so desperate, when you're in this situation that you see China is growing stronger and stronger, and suddenly you have another strongman jumping out saying, I'm gonna take China as an enemy, you know, I'm gonna make American great again and China not so great. It sells as a very good salesman. However, if you take a close examination of Trump action and what he said, you will see the flaws is everywhere. You will see her daughter's brand, Ivanka Trump's brand, is established in China all the time. You will see his family is benefiting from the Chinese government. You will see from the leaked documentary that she helped him to get reelected. And there's so many other things that already prove he is problematic. So when Trump saying I'm gonna attack China and it's just a fake campaigning for keep winning the election. It's almost like you scratch my balls, I will scratch your balls, as the saying said. I don't believe that he would seriously really put human rights as a priority. In another world, if the price is proper, he will sell Hong Kong, he will sell Taiwan, he will sell Xinjiang, Tibetans anytime with Xi Jinping.
I mean, yes, I don't know what else to say. It's unfortunately a very extremely true, and I think this is when us people across the world need to come together, as you said at the beginning, share the risk and work together for a better future, and not think that another wannabe dictator who cracks down on rights at home can help people elsewhere. You mentioned police brutality in Hong Kong and in the US, and I think that's the best example. We saw some of your art. I would encourage everyone to go and check it out on your Twitter, on your Instagram, on your website. It is extremely powerful. I want to let you have the last word. We will enter into a session in exactly 2 minutes with the Tibetan representative to the EU. And I want you to be able to say what you are asking the audience to do after this session with you as we close.
I mean, everyone can be an artist. Everyone can be a political cartoonist. Everyone can create a piece that go viral and achieve some important messages, whether it's about against Chinese government or it's about your local human rights issues. Just do it. Action speaks louder than any words.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. It was absolutely incredible. Thank you everyone for joining the session. We'll be back in less than 1 minute.